That's writing for you. When you make space for passion, it doesn't turn up. You have to forget about the boys, he said, for a while at least. They'll devour you. They can't help it. It's in their nature. They'll take it all until there's nothing left. A creative writing workshop will contain students whose ambitions and abilities, whose conceptions of literature itself are so diverse that what they have in common, the desire to write, could almost be considered meaningless. It is interesting how keen people are for you to do something they would never dream of doing themselves. How enthusiastical, why they drive you to your own destruction. Leaving things behind and starting again is a way of coping with difficulties. I learnt very early in my life that I was able to leave a place and still remain myself. For me, a novel is always the result of my attempt to impose myself on raw circumstances. It is a concrete form of lived experience. It had been, in other words, our family home, and I had stayed to watch it become the grave of something I could no longer definitively call either a reality or an illusion. Having your second child, in case you were wondering, is a lot harder than having your first, except for those people who find it easier. I'm afraid I don't have the latest figures to confirm this. As it stands, motherhood is a sort of wilderness through which each woman hacks her way, part martyr, part pioneer, a turn of events from which some women derive feelings of heroism, while others experience a sense of exile from the world they knew. I suppose, I said, it is one definition of love, the belief in something that only the two of you can see. Ascendance is born into this world neither good nor bad, and that to establish its character is a question of the subtlest possible adjustments, a process of intuition, to which exaggeration and force are fatal. What I increasingly felt, in marriage and in motherhood, was that to live as a woman and to live as a feminist were two different and possibly irreconcilable things. I remain fascinated by where you go as a woman once you are a mother, and if you ever come back. An eating disorder epidemic suggests that love and disgust are being jointly marketed, as it were, that wherever the proposition might first have come from, the unacceptability of the female body has been disseminated culturally, and likewise, I was beginning to see my own fears and desires manifested outside myself, was beginning to see in other people's lives a commentary on my own. Hope is like one of those orchids that grows around toxic waste, lovely in itself and an assertion, if you like, of indefatigable good, but a sure sign that something nasty lies underneath. It was an interesting thought that stability might be seen as the product of risk. It was perhaps when people tried to keep things the same that the process of decline began. Shame is something you'll find a lot of particularly Catholic girls feel about their bodies, about their sexuality, about their diet, about anything you like. Shame is the way you keep them down. That's the way to crush a girl. Parenthood, like death, is an event for which it is nearly impossible to be prepared. It brings you into a new relationship with the fact of your own existence, a relationship in which one may be rendered helpless. There was a poem, she said, by Beckett that he had written twice, once in French and once in English, as if to prove that his bilinguality made him to people and that the barrier of language was ultimately impassable. So much is lost, he said, in the shipwreck. What remains are fragments, and if you don't hold on to them, the sea will take them too. Music, she said, in a languorous and dreamlike manner. Music is a betrayer of secrets. It is more treacherous even than dreams, which at least have the virtue of being private. I have no sense of a model or predecessor when I write a memoir. For me, the form exists as a method of processing material that retains too many connections to life to be approached strictly and aesthetically. A memoir is a risk, a one-off, a bastard child. To become a mother is to learn a whole language to relearn it, perhaps as it was the tongue to which we were born, and hence gain entrance to a forgotten world of comprehension. The human capacity for self-delusion is apparently infinite, and if that is the case, how are we ever meant to know, except by existing in a state of absolute pessimism? that once again we are fooling ourselves. The true self seeks release, not constraint. It doesn't want to be corseted in a sonnet or made to learn a system of musical notations. It wants liberation, which is why very often it fastens on the novel, for the novel seems spacious, undefined, free. Even if they knew the truth of their own feelings, most mothers would be socially and emotionally incapable of revealing it. I would like, she resumed, to see the world more innocently, again, more impersonally, but I have no idea how to achieve this, other than by going somewhere, completely unknown where. I have no identity and no associations. People are least aware of others when demonstrating their own power over them. If love is what is held to make us immortal, hatred is the reverse. A feminist man is a bit like a vegetarian. It's the humanitarian principle he's defending, I suppose. It is hard to listen while you were talking. He began to ask me questions, as though he had learned to remind himself to do so, and I wondered what or who had taught him that lesson, which many people never learn. How can there be so many mothers in the world but so little sense of what it might be to become one, and of those two ways of living in the moment and living outside it? Which was more real? There was a great difference, I said, between the things I wanted and the things I could apparently have, and until I had finally and forever made my peace with that fact, I had decided to want nothing at all. The one thing you can say about people for sure is that they'll only free themselves if freedom is in their own interest. What Ryan had learned from this is that your failures keep returning to you, while your successes are something you always have to convince yourself of. You could spend your whole life, she said, trying to trace events back to your own mistakes. Writing comes out of tension between what's inside and what's outside. I said that I thought most of us didn't know how truly good or truly bad we were, and most of us would never be sufficiently tested to find out. Indeed, we believe everyone has a book in them, a book, not a symphony, and not even a poem. What is it, this book everyone has in them? It is perhaps that haunting entity, the true self. The true self seeks release, not constraint. A neighbor is something that belongs to the stable world of home life, the thing that lives next door to you. He was like a cupboard rammed full with junk. When he opened the door, everything fell out. It took time to reorganize himself. Fate, he said, is only truth in its natural state. When you leave things to fate, it can take a long time, he said, but its processes are accurate and inexorable. Human beings have a need, generally, to destroy things. The Freudian principle of civilization is correct. There's always a difference between the family image and the reality. I mean, you never hear someone say they wanted to have an affair but they couldn't find the time, do you? The prospect is exciting, for it is when the baby sleeps that I liaise as if it were a lover with my former life. These liaisons, though always thrilling, are often frantic. I dash about the house, unable to decide what to do, to read, to work, to telephone my friends, whatever we might wish to believe about ourselves. We are only the result of how others have treated us. You can't tell your story to everybody, I said. Maybe you can only tell it to one person. Rachel Cusk, born February 8, 1967, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, to British parents in 1967, the second of four children with an older sister and two younger brothers, and spent much of her early childhood in Los Angeles. She moved to her parents' native Britain in 1974, settling in Berry Street, Edmonds, Suffolk. She comes from a wealthy Catholic family and was educated at St. Mary's Convent in Cambridge. She studied English at New College, Oxford. Rachel published her first novel, Saving Agnes, in 1993, which received the Whitbread First Novel Award. Its themes of femininity and social satire remain central to her work over the next decade. She followed this in 1997 with The Country Life, a comedic novel inspired by Stella Gibbons's Cold Comfort Farm and Charlotte Brant's Jane Eyre. It won a 1998 Somerset Maugham Award. In 2003, she published The Lucky Ones, a novel of linked stories about 5 different people, loosely connected to each other. That same year, Rachel was nominated by Granta magazine as one of 20 best of young British novelists. Her 7th novel, Arlington Park, was shortlisted for the 2007 Orange Prize for Fiction. In responding to the formal problems of the novel representing female experience, she began to work in nonfiction, A Life's Work, a memoir of motherhood published in 2001, and 201 Days Aftermath, which chronicled her marriage to and divorce from her second husband, the photographer Adrian Clarke. Rachel has been a professor of creative writing at Kingston University.